Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett, blogger, HR pro, and author of the best-selling book, The Talent Fixed. And I'm up next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
Love it. All right, this is RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology, inspire conversations. Our mission is to teach you about the news, tools, and tactics for finding talent online. Today's show is a recruiter edition. The RecTech podcast is sponsored by our friends at WorkHere. WorkHere connects your business with local people who want to work for you. With WorkHere, it's all about location. So what they do is they target candidates with GPS precision. They reach people who live closer to your locations because a reduction in commute time can result in 50% reduction in turnover rates. They will advertise your jobs on the screen they use the most, their mobile phone. They target candidates who live near your locations with messaging that is delivered in the social and mobile apps they use most often. It's easy per candidate pricing. They don't charge by the job post, open job, or user. They charge a small per location platform fee and a per candidate delivered success fee. This way, they're driven to deliver engaged, vetted local candidates that are ready for you to hire. Learn more at WorkHere.com. All right, let's get to our guest. Tim Sackett is well known to the recruiting industry. In fact, some might call him HR famous. He is the president of the Michigan-based staffing firm, HRU Technical Resources. He blogs 5 days a week at timsackett.com. And he just wrote a book, too. So we'll chat about that and much more on today's show. Tim, welcome to RecTech. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Hey, before we even get started, WorkHere, I just demoed them last week. And so people are going to go, oh my gosh, Chris and Tim set this up, right? It's a commercial within the commercial.
We did not.
It's not. Like, I actually just demoed them and was like, holy crap, that's really good stuff. Like, because I think one of the things they touch on is that there's so much pain right now when it comes to hiring. And everyone thinks, oh yeah, for tech people or for nurses or for like really high-end, like high-priced people. You know, the major pain point is like $10 an hour, $15 an hour, local talent. Like, companies are begging just for anybody to show up. And I think WorkHere has a product that companies can use that are really struggling with that. And I was just like, holy crap, like, you guys have figured out, like, this is a really good product for, like, I mean, for people who are in real pain. So yeah, just a little extra love, I guess, for the WorkHere folks, because I really like their stuff.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that. They're doing some good things with, geofencing and getting the ads down to the local person, which I think is key. Recruiting online today is really about location and intent, and they do a pretty good job at doing that. So awesome, good to hear.
Well, it's taking it's most people that are like I'm here in Lansing, Michigan, and I have within a mile of me, I probably have 20 different companies that are just, 150 person, whatever, right? Some warehouse that makes whatever, some widget. And every one of them has a sign up, like they need to hire. But every one of those companies has like an HR person who recruiting is just one part of their job. So they'll never have the sophistication to go out and do programmatic and geofencing and geotargeting and all this stuff. And so it really is good to have technologies like WorkHere that basically take all of that sophistication away and just say, look, here's how easy we're going to make this. We're going to have people show up. Yeah. and that's just it. It's just boom. And again, for me, it's kind of a disruptor to the temp industry for all intents and purposes, right? Like, instead of calling a Kelly Girls or, whatever, kind of temp place you would call, you just kind of have this where it's like, hey, I don't really want to deal with temps. I want to actually have them work for me, but I want to have good local people. So, yeah. So there we go. We're already off on our first tangent on the commercial.
I know, right? Well, kind of piggybacking on that, I mean, I was going to say that it's up to the company, too, to recognize the fact that they need the technology, right, and actually implement it. Sure. So I think a lot of them still struggle with, whatever recruiter they have on staff, it just isn't that tech savvy, I guess is the word. But it's definitely getting better. And I think if you're a small company like that, like you said, Tim, it's in your best interest to go out and seek out some of these vendors to help you out, because you can't do it alone. And
what is it? I was at SHRM, Nebraska SHRM State Conference last week speaking, and one of the sessions I did was on just like the HR technology you need to know kind of thing right now if you're struggling to hire. And I can't tell you how many people came up afterwards. Like we had no idea that any of this stuff was even market or available. And it speaks to a couple of things. One, just how crazy the noise is in the HR tech space right now, which you and I know, but like I don't think we really ever were in it so much that we kind of have some understanding. Whereas if you're just an HR person running, a 300-person shop in, middle of Michigan or whatever, like you're never going to be able to keep up on that.
Nope.
Like it's too complicated, from that. And then I think the complexity of what these tech companies, because again, if you think of most of the HR tech companies, TA tech companies, they come out, it's usually a tech person who starts the company. They really get it. In fact, to them, this stuff is super easy. It's almost like it's brainless. But when I talk to their marketing folks struggle to really bring the conversation down to a point where an HR person or
you have to dumb it down.
That's just normal, quote unquote normal, that they understand what it is. And many times they're unwilling to dumb it down, and yet they have great tech that they can't sell because as soon as that HR person goes, they won't tell you that they don't get it. They don't tell you that they don't understand it. They'll just go, in their mind, they're going, I don't get this. And that basically that's just a no buy.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing whatever I'm doing. That's more painful because I don't understand what the hell you do,
I think a perfect example of that is, this whole, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence now, but to the average recruiter, that means nothing. To me, they should be calling it automation intelligence because that's really what it's doing. It's automating all these processes. That's more understandable for the average recruiter out there, right?
I go from the AI to IA, right? It goes from artificial intelligence, and I say it's really more intelligent automation.
Okay.
And so, because that's really what it is. It's not necessarily, AI, right, for real AI, is being able to make decisions on its own.
Yeah.
None of this stuff does that.
No.
We're still telling it kind of, hey, here's the decision tree, right? That you're going to follow this. If this does, then this does, kind of thing. But it's not necessarily real.
It's all working off just keywords.
It just causes confusion for everybody. Yeah,
it's all just working off keywords or kind of pre-written workflow out there. It's really not that complicated if you boil it down, but. Anyway, so my first question to him was, first and foremost, are you still in Indeed jail?
Oh, for sure. Now, again, it was funny because I actually had a family member ask, she actually runs her own company. And so I saw her this past weekend during, so we're taping this on the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. So holiday weekend, saw family. And she goes, so what the heck is this Indeed jail I keep saying? You keep making fun of her, saying. And I said, well, it's not really Indeed jail, but she was actually feeling this from running a company standpoint because she's like, hey, we've had really good success with Indeed, but they're coming back to us now and asking us to pay more and more money. And like, what is going on? And I'm like, well, let me talk, right? Here's what this really is. So yeah, I'm in Indeed jail, which basically means they're just not pulling my stuff for free anymore. They're not giving me that free organic traffic. That I can still use Indeed if I want to spend tons of money. Mm-hmm. But the reality is I'm using things like CareerBuilder, ZipRecruiter, Programmatic, spending about half the money we were, and I'm getting more traffic than I ever have. So I think there's a lot of ways out there that people are starting to realize that you don't have to be hooked to Indeed. Kind of like I think people also, they kind of get hooked to LinkedIn a lot as well. If I go in and ask any big Fortune 500 TA shop, tell me the one tool that you couldn't live without, almost always they will say LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. But then when I take a look at their source of hire, LinkedIn's not even in the top 5. It's, and I'm just like, so you can't live without it, yet it's not even a top 5 source for you. This is kind of crazy. But I get it because I use LinkedIn every day as well. We've got addicted to that tool because it's this ready kind of just huge network of potential talent that's out there, blah, blah, blah. And you can fill your entire day just messing around with that. But Christy, you and I watch, we're obviously pay attention to this stuff probably way more than we should. And to me, Indeed's doing exactly what Monster and CareerBuilder did back in the day. If you think about 2 decades ago, we conditioned candidates to find a job by going to one of the big job boards. Mm-hmm. We had Super Bowl commercials. We taught them, hey, if you're going to look for a job, you go to Monster, you go to Career Builder, you go to Dice. And then little by little, Indeed came around, and we trained the candidates differently. We said, okay, instead of going to the job boards or instead of even going to our own career site, go to Indeed because all of the jobs are there. And now we're having to recondition the candidates again and go, oh, by the way, now you just stay on Google. Just search for your job on Google. Google's going to do it all, and it will. I mean, I think within 3 years, when people say, oh, well, how do I find a job? You just go to Google and type in engineering jobs near me or nursing jobs near me. And every single job that you would ever want is going to be right there on the Google machine.
Exactly. Speaking of that, are your jobs on Google Jobs now for your company?
Yeah. My stuff gets on to Google Jobs. And the funny part for me was we do,
that's the new free.
Like everybody. We're spraying on a number of sites, right? So we're on Career Builder, we're on Zip, we're on, all kinds of other, kinds of smaller kind of job board type sites, looking to do. And so it's interesting to see when you search your jobs on Google for Jobs, what it will come up under. Because sometimes it'll come under a Zip, sometimes it'll come under a Career Builder, sometimes it comes under our own site. It's not perfect where it will come under, where it's always going to come under one thing or another, because the schema is different, on every jobs and how it's pulling through the algorithm based on the other jobs for that of whatever you're searching for. So it is unique, but the traffic is definitely up considerably on the Google side. So
nice. That's really good traffic too. I mean, the stats on those visitors, like the bounce rate and time on site, it's just skyrockets. It's just on some of the stats.
And still, when I go speak and even talk about Google for Jobs, no matter where I'm at, there's still just a huge disconnect and lack of understanding of what that really is.
Yeah.
Which again will just play to Indeed basically staying around longer. And again, Indeed loves to come back and go, oh, our revenue was up 8% last year. And I'm like, well, let's talk about margin. How were those margins? Were they up? Because they're spending literally ungodly amounts of money on advertising to keep their traffic numbers up, right? And so that becomes one of the issues. Plus, there's still basically the story they're sharing. I mean, we have ultra low unemployment, which plays to them very well because they'll go, oh, well, the reason your traffic is down, 50% year to date is because of ultra low unemployment. So we have to actually, increase, your spend by double to make sure you keep the same traffic. And so many people, so many heads of talent I'm looking at are actually buying into this. I was speaking with a head of talent a couple weeks ago, and last year they spent $10,000 a month on Indeed. And this year they're spending $20,000 a month basically for the exact same traffic.
Jeez.
And I'm like, do you understand? But you're doing, and then I'm like, so I said, hey, go back down to 10, spend the other 10 on programmatic, on some Zip, on some whatever. And I said, I guarantee you your traffic will actually be up. You'll be higher.
Yeah.
Like in a little by little, you can start reducing, that spend. I'm not saying you need to go away from Indeed altogether. I think there's, we've conditioned candidates to go there. They're still going to go there. You can still make great hires.
Yep.
But you shouldn't be throwing all your eggs in that basket,
The other day on Twitter, we were, I think it was you, we were talking about, you mentioned about the career site links on company homepages. Recap that for the audience real quick, if you could.
When those, what it was a statement basically to measure how good you are at recruitment marketing. And so I said, go to your career page or go to your homepage of your company. I said, go to about, scroll down to careers. Yeah, you suck at recruitment marketing.
I love that.
And there was some real big reaction that came back where people were like, well, we don't control our home
That's
site.
That's the big excuse.
Blah, blah,
I'm
blah.
I mean, you as an HR person, you got to go fight for that link, man. It's like,
my
God.
God.
That space on the homepage is very valuable. So if you're serious about recruiting, you got to get on there.
At this point in the world, you have to have, when someone comes to, x.com, whatever your site is, the first thing they should see in the upper right-hand corner is click here to work here or whatever. Like it should be a button, right?
Exactly.
And that button goes exactly to the list of jobs you have or a filter mechanism that, they can filter by city, state, location, whatever. But you cannot, literally we are forcing people to search. And sometimes like I had a TA leader I was working with, and she called and she wanted, to hire me to come in, right, to help them. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, let me just do a couple of things real quick with you on the phone right now. And I'd already done this because she had sent me the email, and then we had set up a call. And I said, okay, right now, are you in front of your computer? Yep. Okay, let's go to your site. Okay, now show me how to apply for one of your jobs. And as she went through, took 9 clicks to even get to apply.
Oh my God.
9 clicks. And I said, so here's your issue. You don't need me. You need to find a way to get that to like 1 or 2 clicks to apply to a job.
Yes.
And then come back and we'll talk about it. But like you're losing probably 75% of your applicant traffic because they can't even find out where the hell your jobs are. It's insane to me.
I have this little bit I created called Recruiting Redneck about things like this. So you want to hear some of this?
Yeah.
So, okay. So if you hide your careers link under the About Us menu, you might be a recruiting redneck. If you still have a one-page career site, you might be a recruiting redneck. If you still post jobs online in PDF format, you're definitely a recruiting redneck. If you still use an Excel spreadsheet as your ATS, you might be a recruiting redneck. I could go on.
I know. I mean, yeah. And again, at this point, people go, well, we don't have money for an ATS. I'm like, you can get a free ATS that is really good. It's like, they don't even charge you. There's no reason to use Excel spreadsheets.
Man, it just drives me crazy when I see stuff like that, as a recruiting marketing guy.
I love the talent rediscovery kinds of technology that's on the market as well. When you take a look at like Restless Bandit, Crowded, Career Builder has their own one as well. Because like I'm running a staffing firm, and I constantly work with companies that will do like project RPO work. They'll come and say, look, we need to hire 10 designers or 10 engineers or whatever in a really short period of time. Can you help us? But we don't want to pay, obviously, these giant full 25% fees on every single person. And I'll say, yeah, if you let us use your ATS. If you let us into your ATS, we'll do it for like $5,000 a piece, $7,000 a piece, whatever. I mean, literally, a quarter of what they normally would spend, because I know my team will be able to fill probably 70% of the roles through their own ATS, of people that are already in their ATS that they just can't figure out how to mine and connect with and nurture.
Are you finding that when you're going into the ATS that those candidates have never been touched? They never even got a rejection notice or whatever? I mean, how much of that is happening?
Most of them, what happens is, they'll put an opening out there, right? Like, we need to hire a designer. They'll go through the process. They'll contact a couple of them. They'll set the interviews up for those. The hiring manager will interview them. They'll hire one. But if you take a look at all the candidates that actually applied, there maybe was, 25 or 50 or whatever. And they only actually contacted a fraction. And the reason they contacted them was because they were actually the first ones in, not because they were the best ones. And the best ones actually are probably ones that never even got a response back. They might have gotten an automated response when the job was closed, if they even closed the job. A lot of times they don't even do that.
Yeah.
And so the person never got a response at all. And what I'm trying to tell people is like, look, these people directly applied for your job. They said, hey, I'm in love with you. I want to come work for you. And you did nothing with them, but it doesn't mean that they hate you now. It just means, oh crap, I guess they weren't interested, or maybe, I don't know, like there was just nothing happened, right? So they really have no kind of preconceived notion at all. And then all of a sudden we contact them and say, hey, by the way, do you want to come work for this company? And they're like, oh, heck yeah, I applied there 18 months ago and never heard back. You're like, well, now you are.
That's pretty cool. They go into their ATS. I love that tactic.
Well, no, and sometimes like you'll get that pushback a little, like, well, we're not, we'll have to talk with our legal team. We're not sure, blah blah blah. And I'm like, look, I know your ATS is whatever, right? It's greenhouse. You can go in there, set me up a recruiter only access that I can get in on the SaaS platform, and there's no legal ramifications, right? Like, we'll just go in there and here's what we're going to do. You can measure and see every single thing I'm going to do. And at that point, they're usually like, oh gosh, show me how to do this. Oh, okay, this looks good. Let's go ahead and do this.
Nice. So I bought your book last night, by the way. It's coming tomorrow.
All right.
So I haven't read it yet,
nice.
But tell me, how's it doing, and what can I expect to learn from it?
It's doing really well in terms of like, business. But that was one of those kind of learnings I had. Like I had never written a book. I didn't know if I could write a book. I knew I could write blog posts because I've done a million of those, but I had no idea you could sit down and write like a 60,000 word book. But it came together really well. Sherm was obviously gracious enough to reach out and ask me to write one and then publish it and edit it and do all that good stuff. So they made it super easy for me. But in my mind, I kept thinking, I'm like, oh gosh, you should be able to sell 10,000 books. Like you have no idea what like that. And they're like, yeah, if you sold 10,000 books, that would be the largest selling Sherm book ever. Like
really?
You don't understand, like business books don't really sell a lot of copies.
Yeah.
Because there's like 100,000 business books that get launched every day. Some are self-published, some are, they're through just a million different platforms.
How long did it take you to write, by the way?
I started, it took me about 9 months from, literally the very first, like starting of a outline to I'm turning this in as my final draft, and then they'll go through the editing and do all that stuff, which it took about 4 months to go through like editing, printing. I didn't realize it would take all of that, but they have like 4 different editors that go through it and they ask you a million questions back. And these editors have no idea about anything about talent acquisition or recruiting. So they're asking, a lot of times they're recommending changes that completely change the context of a paragraph for a statement. And they're like, no, you can't do that. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
So there's a lot of that work. But, and again, that was, it's nights and weekends. I'm not saying it was like full time for 9 months. It was, 10 hours a week here, 20 hours a week there or whatever, full, 8 hours Saturday. But it came together really well. And the feedback has just been tremendous. Like, so far, I get so many people that they didn't even know that I was a blogger or anything. They just showed up at a conference or found a link somewhere. They got recommended to them. And read it, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, like this is so awesome!" So
nice.
That's nice. I get a lot of really kind of positive feedback. And my thing was, I didn't write the book for like you, right? Like you get this shit. Like you've been doing this stuff forever. Like I could never impress you with my recruiting knowledge. Like I read your stuff, and and so I wrote it for the masses. And the funnier part was I had a lot of people do reviews that were just so great, and I felt awesome. And then I don't know if you ever read John Sumsner did a review.
No, I didn't see that.
And got
on Amazon.
And I love John, and I love spending time with John and talking with John because he's brilliant. Like, and he's a great writer.
Yep.
But I didn't write the book for John. But John's like, well, so if you want me to, I will. But I understand, like, I'm going to give it a real review. And like, he just kicked me right in the teeth, in the best way possible. Like, and he's like, are you sure you want me to share this? Like, I will if you want. I'm like, oh gosh, yes, because he wrote it so eloquently. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to say, like, I've never been like put down in so many ways that sounded so awesome.
Oh my God. So, what's it about, Tim? Tell us quickly what's in it.
So I wrote the book because I get, again, being a blogger and writing every day, like you get so many reach outs, from so many people that want your time, that want your, recommendations, that want, just question after question. And there's a point where you just don't have capacity to do that. And you feel bad because they're audience people and they've given you so much love and, respect by reading your stuff. And so the book was really an answer to, what would I do if you asked me to come in and run your talent shop tomorrow? From beginning to end, what would I do? How would I do it? How would I set it up? What were the things I would look at? And so if you're a TA leader or if you're just a leader of a company and your company's struggling with finding talent or recruiting or whatever, like you should be able to read this book and go, all right, I think I got a good roadmap on what we should be doing and a good understanding. And the way I write is so, literally fourth grade-ish that anybody can read it and understand it, and I think take it away and go, oh, I think I can actually go out and do some of this stuff, and really have what I would say is an innovative kind of best-in-class kind of recruiting practice that you would set up. So so that's what it is. And I had so many friends, and that I think I probably quoted like 60 different like kind of recruiting like peers that we have out in the field and stuff that are doing stuff. So there's a lot of people that added to the book, I think, from their expertise.
Again, it's called The Talent Fix Audience, and Chuck Matthews writes on Amazon, this book contains no sugarcoating. Tim tells it like it is and how it should be. So there you go.
Yeah, you can go out there on the Amazon and go out there and get it. And so far it's gone really well. And but it's when you write books like that for business, you're not doing it for like the money. Like everyone's like, oh, so you're probably rich now. And like, yeah, you don't make any money writing a book. You might make some money speaking, or
it's a great business card.
You definitely don't. Yeah, you don't do it right. You don't do it from that. No, it is really good business development. Like, I constantly send it to heads of TA, and they'll reach back out and like want to talk. And I'm like, well, guess what? Like, I run a staffing firm. Like, let's talk. Like, you're probably spending money. And they're like, oh, heck yeah, I'd rather spend it with you. So it ends up being really good BD for me.
Nice. Tim, what's a day in a life like for you? I mean, you blog 5 days a week, you speak at multiple conferences throughout the year, and you run a staffing firm. So how do you do all that? It's not easy.
Well, I have a really great team that works for me at HRU, and we've been together a long time. So my leadership team, we've been together almost 10 years now, working together without losing anybody, which is pretty cool. And so I think, obviously I have a great work environment, but they also know their stuff. Like I could be hit by a train tomorrow and like the company would just continue to, I think, roll really well. And so that speaks to obviously their ownership and, their skills and abilities and all of that. So they allow me, to do all that. So I'm really thankful. So I think that's I get that question a lot. Like, how can you do all of this? Well, one is I kind of hired and put together and trained and built like a really great team that allows me to kind of do a lot of this stuff. And then, my family, has also sacrificed, quite a bit. I call her a Hall of Fame wife, primarily because she's in the Athletic Hall of Fame at Wyoming for volleyball. And so we always I always tell people, and they're like, oh, that's so sweet. You call her a Hall of Fame wife. And I'm like, well, she really is in the Hall of Fame. So, she allows me, by taking on so much of the family stuff, she allows me to do a lot of that. Cause it's nights and weekends. Like people, people always like wonder, like, how do you write?
Yeah, you must be constantly working, right? Just kind of blending in work and life, wherever you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason Seiden, which, we both know, he calls it professional, where you have, kind of a lot of us want to have two lives, right? We want to have a professional life. We want to have a personal life. And he kind of says like the modern day balance is really this blend of both together. I'm constantly, if you meet me in person with my family, or if you meet me professionally at a conference, I'm the same person.
Yeah.
Like I'm exactly the same person you're going to meet, which allows me to, have a really good balance in my life to say I can be personal all the time and I can be professional all the time, because as I'm living one life, I'm not trying to live two lives. And then, the writing thing though, I think was what most people kind of get held up on, because it takes them a long time to write a blog post or to put something together. And both Chris Dunn, who gave me the original opportunity to write, and myself have the same kind of trait, which is we can write stuff really quickly. Like you could give me just about any subject right now and say, oh, talk about where you should have your jobs button on your career on your homepage of your website, and I can send you a blog post in 10 minutes on that.
Yep.
500 words, unique ideas, like boom, here you go. And most people just can't do that. They're just like, oh my gosh, it would take me 3 hours and I would have to go through 5 edits. And, I'm just like, no, ship it, go. Here's what I think.
Yep. No, definitely. To be a natural writer like that, it definitely helps things. And I can crank out a blog post pretty quickly too. It's kind of second nature to me by now.
I mean, and that's the people that do it all the time. Like that's the one trait that I think we all kind of share is the content becomes the easy. Like people will go, how do you come up with your ideas? And I'm like, I have constant ideas. Like I email this is my own little thing I do to myself because I'm an email guy. I email myself constantly ideas with the subject line post. Then I can just go in on the search box and do subject, colon post. And then every single idea that I've ever had comes up, and it's a constant kind of online diary of all these ideas. Because I'll be driving down the road and just be like, Siri, email, post, here, idea, boom.
I do the same thing.
Go. And so I'm probably 3 to 4 times a day, I'm sending myself ideas. Well, I'm only writing 5 a week. So it's, it's one of those things where sometimes I'll look back and look at something and I'll go, I have no idea what that even means. But I said it 2 weeks ago, and at the time I'm sure it was a brilliant idea, that now I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm constantly emailing my email list is my to-do list, basically my email inbox.
Yeah.
So I just constantly email myself things, and I just check those off as I get to do them. So that's cool. All right, let me take a quick break here to talk about our second sponsor today, audience, which is HireTool, the recruiter's best friend. HireTool has some new updates out. They fixed the recent Facebook search hack, so that's back. New diversity filter, redesigned candidate profiles, more import enhancements. Great tool for sourcers out there. Do you guys use that at HRU, Tim? HireTool?
You know what? It's funny. I'm getting ready to actually do a demo and write about them. It's been a long time since I've seen their tool. We looked at it and don't. Partly because my team's all Boolean trained and kind of all this stuff. But I love the sourcing tech for those, especially for those teams that don't have necessarily the most skilled recruiters or sourcers.
Right,
like it makes it almost idiot-proof.
It's a great tool, yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah. Well, the one thing I say I'll tell is, like, it doesn't matter if it's HireTool or any of the other sourcing tools that are out there. It doesn't mean that it does away with the work. Now, with some of like the AI automation that they're adding in terms of being able to, they source the profiles and then they'll actually reach out to the people automatically and do some light screening and make sure they're interested. And then all of a sudden your recruiters have like this kind of hot list of candidates who have already shown interest. To me, that's like the holy grail to where we need to get to with those sourcing tools, because when they originally came on market, it was, oh, by the way, here's 50 million profiles and they're searchable and, there's emails and blah, blah, blah. And all that was great, but all it did was actually add on more work to the recruiter, right? Yeah. Now it's like, oh, great, now I have to do more reach out. I got to pick up the phone more times. It wasn't reducing the work. And, and we were kind of in this weird time, like there's never been a time in history where it was easier to find talent. And most heads of talent, most like leaders of companies would go, oh, no, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's almost impossible to find talent right now. I'm like, no, it's super easy to find talent. Yes. It's impossible to get them to work for your crappy company.
Exactly.
For your crappy pay, your crappy benefits. That's what's impossible.
Yeah.
But to find them is super easy. They just aren't interested in you.
Yeah, they're all out there.
So to get them interested is super hard.
Pull up your browser and there they are. I mean, it's literally that easy.
So I love that sourcing aspect, and I love what HireTool and some of the others are doing when they're adding in some, like you said, that intelligent kind of automation, where now all of a sudden you have chatbots kind of reaching out to candidates and saying, hey, here's this opening, and would you be interested in the natural language processing that's being used?
Yeah, that's cool.
It's scary how well. Like, you can't tell it's a chat bot.
Yep.
Like, it seems like a real person.
What are a couple tools doing that right now? Tell the audience.
Screw around with it. Yeah, Olivia is probably the best in the market, right, in terms of that I've seen, that I think does a really great job. And then I think the natural language processing of Olivia is just really tremendous. And then if you try to like break it and ask it weird questions, like, do you want to go on a date? Like, it will respond in a way that a person would respond, which is, kind of having fun with it, but also like, politely being like, okay, idiot, like, let's get back to business. Like, I'm not going to have you, be creepy on me, kind of thing. So,
yeah, I'm waiting for the Google Duplex recruiter voice thing to come out.
I know. Did you saw the videos, like, and how those were all kind of like hacked to make it work? And then
for biz dev and for recruiters, it's going to be a gold mine. That thing.
Can you? Yeah, well, I mean, it gets to the point where I think, like, I can foresee a time in the near future that you really, as a recruiter, the only thing that you're going to have to do is close.
Yeah.
Like recruiters will be closers. That's it. Because everything from sourcing attraction all the way, even setting up the interview, I mean, all the way until the point where you go, okay, now we have to close this person. Like, and then that probably takes some real, I mean, because AI is not there yet. Well, that's going to take some real interaction to figure out, okay, what's it going to take to actually get you to take this job because we want you, kind of thing.
Yeah. You must have heard a lot of stories over the years. What's like the most crazy or creative thing you ever heard a recruiter tell you about, like how they found a candidate? Do you have any stories that come to mind around that, either sourcing wise or just going out and finding somebody?
Yeah, it's not the sourcing stuff because that's all kind of just if you build the best search string, eventually you're going to run into some really unique kind of sources.
Yeah.
I think like Levy is the classic of using like patents and different patent offices and all this public kind of data that's out there. For me, it's like the real life stuff. Like I love people who will go in and are willing to open up every aspect of their life. And like the one thing that we tend not to want to like pay attention to is like the relationship you have like with religion. And so like and for me it hit home because I actually about a year ago hired a pastor and had been a full-time pastor for 8 years. Decided like he was younger and then got married, had kids, and he was like, hey, I actually have to have like a real job. Like this pastor thing isn't going to necessarily pay the bills, and I don't think my wife really wants to be poor the rest of our lives, even though we had this calling to God kind of thing. And he's able to pull in like this network of people that were just were people that were practitioners.
So you hired a pastor to be a recruiter?
Yeah, and he's exceptional. Like,
wow.
If you think about what's a pastor, like he has no judgment. I mean, I can have him work on a skilled trades job. I can have him work on a CIO position. Across the board, like he talks to people, like he connects with people, like there's no fear. Like he actually enjoys that part of the job, right? Wow. I mean, again, he is a pastor. Like he loves talking to people, and providing counsel and all this stuff. Like, but like I've seen recruiters that I had another recruiter that he was a big volunteer in his church, and they went back into their church and were able to literally there's thousands of members in some of these churches, and they were able to kind of tap that network.
Yeah, they get their own network
to kind of go out and do that. And again, most of us don't think of like our networks that we have. Like we think of like, oh, we have a LinkedIn network and I have this ATS and I have these job board databases. And you're like, no, you have all these other networks in your life, one of which happens to be your relationship with your church and all these people that are there because now you have this common thing where they trust you. You're like, oh, I go to St. John Vianney as well and blah, blah, blah. And, and being able to kind of use that in a way that it helps you out professionally. And so I have we have these great stories of how people were recruited when like on Sunday morning, like at church, which I always think is really funny, but I'm like, it's such a natural thing, to be able to do that.
That's really interesting. That's a pretty creative place to find a recruiter out there. 2 more questions for you, Tim. What is your advice for a young recruiter today as they're coming up in the ranks and are thinking about getting into recruiting? What's 1 or 2 things you would tell them today?
One is I think demo software, TA technology. I do 1 a week at least, and I obviously I have a blog so I write about it, but I get this question a lot because I'll recommend that people do this, and I tell them to start by just doing 1 a month, and they'll go, well, but what do we tell the company? Like, why would we be demoing? And I go, tell them you're doing research. Like, you're doing research for your tech stack, right, for your TA tech stack. Like, you're looking at tools that potentially you might want to add into next year's budget. I said, they'll demo every single time. Like, they'll be like, oh, hell yeah. Like, they're begging to get demos. And then, just tell them, if you're not interested, just say, I'm not interested. We are not going to buy. They won't waste your time anymore, because they're not trying to sell to somebody who doesn't want to buy. They're trying to sell to somebody who wants to buy. The reason we get kind of, we hate doing demos is because we get sold to constantly because we just won't tell them no. We just drag them along. Well, no, we're not ready now. Maybe later. Call back in 6 months. And then we feel like, well, I don't want to do demos because I don't want to have 12 people calling me constantly trying to sell me. And you're just like, no, tell them no. Tell them, take me off your call list. Don't put me in your CRM. Like, and I said, but what you find is like you actually find really great stuff that even if you can't afford the technology or it's just not the right time to buy because you have a contract, whatever, they'll still give you great ideas of stuff that you might be able to do without the technology. And so for me, and what I find is a lot of TA leaders just don't have the capacity to be able to do it. And so they usually take recommendations from their recruiting and sourcing teams that work for them. Like they'll come, like, oh, hey, did you ever see, like, I just demoed Hire Tool. It's one of the coolest things ever. We have to take a look at it. And then all of a sudden, boom, your head of TA is taking a demo of Hire Tool, and and then you're buying. And I find that grassroots recommendation thing happens more than we think in the TA and HR space in terms of buyers. Again, that's another kind of disconnect with the HR tech community, is that they want to go right to the person that's going to approve the purchase, right? Like, oh, CHRO is the one and that's who we need to be in front of. The CHRO doesn't care. They're not in the weeds every day doing this work. They don't know this is a pain point. What they're going to do is take the recommendation from somebody on their team that has that pain, that says, hey, understand, like that hiring manager that keeps yelling at us in the boardroom because we can't find talent. I think I found a tool that will help us. And then boom, 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 as you go up, all of a sudden now, that CHRO is signing the check or the invoice. But the reality is that person never would have actually found that, that product or even, thought about going to look for that product. So that would be one piece of advice. The other piece of advice would be, but don't discount activity. We tend to always want to go quality over quantity. But what I've found in like my 10 years of running HRU, every single month, my top recruiter is the one that has the most activity, the most outgoing contacts, the most interviews, the most, outgoing phone calls. If I take a look at the recruiting funnel, the person who has the most activity ends up having the most hires every single month. So never discount the activity. How
do you track activity?
So we track multiple things, right? We track incoming, outgoing phone calls through the phone system. We have a digital phone system that does that. And I think what most heads of TA would find is that their phone systems also have the ability to do that. They just have never even asked somebody in IT or the phone company themselves to say, oh, by the way, do you have an app or a piece of software that does this? And they're like, oh, yeah, it came with your phone system. You guys just never turned it on. We can track everything. And so we track just raw phone calls. We track the amount of time on phone because there's also a correlation to that, which I think heads of talent are always shocked when they find out how little their recruiting teams actually spend on the phone. Yeah. My best recruiters spend about 8 hours a week because most of those calls are just really quick, like leave a message kind of call. We track text messages. We track emails. We track, obviously, send-outs to hiring managers. So how many people got screened, how many people from those screens then made it to the next level, which is sending out to the hiring manager. And then from the hiring manager standpoint is you're taking a look at like actual interview percentage, of send-out and, all the way down, So you're just taking a look at those as the funnel kind of goes. You're taking a look at each one of those kind of points that will lead to a hire. Because you'll find really unique. People always think, oh, well, you're doing that for like disciplinary purposes, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it for development. Like I need to know because I have people that will be like activity machines, and they'll fill the top of the funnel, and they'll have more send outs than anybody, and then all of a sudden they're getting no interviews. And so, okay, well, let's talk about quality. Let's spend a little bit more time, with the candidate and dig through. Or you'll find out that they're getting tons of interviews, but then they're not getting hires. And again, maybe they're just tremendous at writing really great marketability and telling this hiring manager, or they're great with setting up. They're really good at setting up the relationship with the hiring manager. So the hiring manager trusts them. So they'll go, oh, Chris, you have to interview these 3 people. All of them are rock stars. And then they trust them. So they go, okay, I will. But then they interview them, and then they're like, yeah, no, like I don't want to. So again, we have to get back to figuring out those points of development so that we can actually get to that final kind of, hire. Yeah. And so like I think too often heads of TA give their teams an out by going, well, we're focused on quality, not quantity. And you're like, no, it's not one or the other. It's both. I'm focused on quality and quantity. Like I need both of those. Yeah. This isn't one or the other, And that's and most people don't don't think that way. So, but I think to me that's one of the precursors to success in this world.
Yeah. Last question: as someone who's seen a lot of HR technology out there, I see too many companies bringing in HR tech for the wrong reasons or implementing it poorly. What's one thing they can do to get HR tech right the first time, Tim?
I think you have to have measures measures in place within the technology process that you can pull and know that. So like in my process, right, with recruiting, I don't tell my people how to do their job. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a recruiter in my environment, you can recruit the way you want to recruit, but I actually do force them to use the technology in at certain points along the process so that we can measure that those funnel activities are happening. And thus, I have 100% kind of adoption. Like I don't have anybody in my shop not using my technology, because if I don't ever put a technology in place where I can't measure the being used. And so as a leader, I can actually go back and run, every Monday I run my reports and go, okay, I know that my technology is being used because that's the only way I get my data to know what the recruiters are doing. And so I think you have to set those up. Too often I talk to like heads of TA or heads of HR, and they'll go, well, they're just not using the system, so we need to get a new system. And they're not going to use that system either.
Yeah.
You have to force them to kind of use the system, which means you have to develop a process that actually uses the technology that's measurable. And then once that's in place, it's no question the adoption will be 100%, or you won't have a job here because you will be fired because you will show that you've worked doing nothing. And then no, I did it. And like once in a while, I'll get a new recruiter that comes in with experience, and I'll go, hey, by the way, looks like you had 0 send-outs last week. You are going to lose your job here. Mm-hmm. No, I sent out 15 people. We're fine. We're good. No. You sent 0 people out last week. You're going to be fired.
Yeah. That's what it says here.
Oh, okay, got it. So if it doesn't happen in the system, it didn't happen. Exactly. If it didn't happen in the system, it didn't happen. Because, again, otherwise it's a waste of, why would we even buy the technology? It's a waste of resource if we're not going to use it.
Yeah. Well, great advice, Tim, as always, and certainly appreciate the conversation today. We could go for hours, I'm sure, talking about this stuff because it's in our nature. But tell people where you're appearing in the next few months. Where can they go see you speak and stuff?
I'll be at HR Tech. You can see me there speaking on recruitment marketing. I also will be speaking on recruitment marketing at SourceCon in Atlanta. I'm at JobVite. You can see me at the JobVite conference if you're out that way. I'm kind of all over. Yeah. So hopefully, or you can just timsackett.com, or you can Google Tim Sackett. There's me. There's also a truck driver chaplain named Tim Sackett. I'm not the truck driver chaplain, even though that would be completely awesome if I was both, right? Yeah. You can find me pretty easy.
Nice. All right, well, that will do for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, WorkHere and HireTool. Subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcast. If you are an iTunes subscriber, leave a review, and I'll thank you on air. Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, always be recruiting.
Another episode of RecTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RecTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RecTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.